Have you seen the recent headlines? Egg smuggling on the rise as bird flu mitigation pushes prices to new highs. Can you imagine this routine traffic stop? I'm sorry, sir, we pulled you over for a taillight, but there's an empty egg carton. Step out of the car, please. Welcome to Grounded, the place to hear the salty truth. I'm your host, Scott Cates, coming to you live from the Northeast Georgia mountains and the tiny town of Tiger, where it's nice today. I guess going to be in the lower 60s, 70 degrees by tomorrow. Tomorrow and Wednesday, 70 degrees, upping the temperature less than 2 weeks out from the time change. Ready to go from the gray to the green as far as the plants are concerned. I'm ready for that. Hopefully you are too as well. Looking forward to a great spring. Just looking forward to the things that are ahead. Boy, I tell you, there's been a lot going on. Have a lot in the pending pile, no doubt. We'll cover all of those. But the first thing I want to cover, and I never imagined in my whole life of being alive I would ever see a news headline about egg smuggling. This cannot be. I had to just, and people have actually asked. I talked about this yesterday, and it's funny because someone asked me, they said, was this a joke? I said, no, this is genuine headlines. They thought I was using this for humor. I'm not using it. I mean, it is humorous today, and we are going to use it for satire. There is no doubt. I can't miss this headline for satire. There are things I never imagined I would ever see in the news headlines in my whole life. But egg smuggling? Now, egg prices, yes, they are continuing to go up. There's no doubt about that. We see that they're on the rise, continuing to surge. I mean, the flu outbreak is huge. There's no doubt about that. And that's serious. It is serious. It's killing the animals even that are around the chickens. It's killing those animals as well. So the reality of this is, yes, egg prices have gone through the roof. I didn't know that we would resort to egg smuggling. I guess they're trying to smuggle eggs across the border here is the issue, and they're busting people for smuggling eggs across the border. Now, this cannot be, I'm just saying there can't be a whole lot of street cred with this arrest. When you go and they lock you up and you're actually in a cell with someone else, what do you say? What are you in for? Yeah, I'm in for egg smuggling. That cannot, there's not a lot of street cred that goes with that. I mean, how do you look tough at all in a cell when you got busted for egg smuggling? I don't know. I mean, there have been people that have been busted, they were running shine in the day, and they were moonshine in the day. They were running, guns or running ammo or running whatever. You've seen this happen a lot. You've even seen, bottom line, we've even seen, sort of this, this migration across the border, and you can understand that. But egg smuggling, I've been running eggs. That's what I've been doing. Been running eggs across the border. Running eggs. And I see it. I said in an earlier podcast, I went to Costco a few weeks back looking for 15 dozen eggs to cook for a number of people for a few weeks there. But when I got there, they didn't have 15 dozen eggs, but they'd replaced that with quail eggs. Now, quail eggs, and people have said, is it worth the time? Because really, you can bust 6 of these things and they'll fit in a shot glass, really. So I get it. I mean, if you're going to replace with something, it may be that, and I'm not sure if commercially we're raising any other birds for this. Ducks, I don't know. Actually saw a video that popped up, and the video was a guy literally cooking an ostrich egg. He literally busted the top out of the ostrich egg and poured that one thing into a pan, huge, gigantic pan, enormous. The only thing I'm thinking out, and I think I said this earlier in a podcast, but the only thing I'm thinking of is I don't want to be next to the ostrich truck with the top down in the convertible. I'm just saying, this is insane what we've come to today, really. And it's funny because when I brought this, I was with a group of people last night, and when I brought it up, I said, you just see the egg price. It was $9.60 for 1 dozen jumbo eggs. Now, I know jumbo are bigger, just a little bigger, but it was $9.60. That's the most I've ever seen jumbo eggs be for 1 dozen. Everywhere you go, there's a 50-cent surcharge. I went to Waffle House with 50-cent surcharge on per egg. At this point, I'm sure that will probably go up. 5 dozen eggs. I think it was $29.65 for 5 dozen eggs. Well, that's a lot. And they're flying off the shelf. You can't. At this point, I was in Walmart. I think it was Saturday that I was in Walmart, and there were still eggs on the shelf. Not many. I think there were only 3 boxes of the 5 dozen eggs that were left there. So in our area, we can still find eggs. So those of you that are listening will probably make the egg run after I say this. But I did not know. I mean, seriously, it can't be. Egg smuggling can't be. What is the penalty for this? That's what I want to know. You get like 5 years. You get 5 years in prison for smuggling eggs across the border. I have no idea. I'm thinking to myself, this can't be. I mean, what kind of crime is this? Really? And at the beginning, I was looking at that. I'm thinking to myself, what's a routine traffic stop going to look like now? I pulled you over for a taillight, but I see that you got an egg carton. Step out of the car, please. You can't imagine. And then how do you call that in? I mean, how does that actually look when you're calling that in? Is it kind of like, 473, got a car with a dozen eggs. We're checking the trunk. Looks like there might be 15 dozen back there. I mean, I have no idea how that actually is going to look. It's interesting to me that just egg smuggling in general, and maybe you can't. How many eggs are we talking here? Are we talking a pickup truck load, a semi truck load? Are we talking you just wore an overcoat? I'm sure you're crossing the border with an overcoat. You got to be real careful that you don't run into someone, if this is the case, or actually trip and fall. But I know eggs are an important part of our life. They are. Everyone likes their eggs differently. And so when they come to me, when I go to the Rusty Bike Cafe here in Clayton, a little plug for my friend Joel at the Rusty Bike Cafe here in Clayton. And when Kim comes up and she says, what are you having? They used to ask me, they would say two basic questions for a breakfast place. How do you take your coffee? That's the first one. I always say, bean and water, please. That's it, just black. Bean and water. And then they ask me, how do you like your eggs? Now, for me, I like my eggs scrambled hard. Matter of fact, I tell them, I say, just scramble them hard and bounce them off the back wall. Seriously, the harder the better. If you can actually take them up and you take a section of scrambled eggs and put them on a golf tee and drive them down the golf range and they bounce and they still stay together, that's the best way to have eggs. For me, it is. I like that. But the reason for that is because when I was a kid, my mother would bust an egg, throw it in the pan, and then slide it off the plate, and then that whole clear part and the yolk would roll off to the side of your plate. And she would say, oh, these are wonderful that way. It still kind of brings the quease back to my soul right here as I'm thinking about it. It just does. I don't know why that is. And it's a psychological thing I'm thinking. It's a big word. It's a psychological thing I'm thinking here today of that. I never order eggs ever and never cook eggs that are sort of over easy, sunny side up, nothing. I don't do that. I just don't. People are like, I like to dip my toast in them. Man, when I'm sitting with people that are doing that, or they bust that up and they mix it in with their grits or they throw it in with their hash browns, I sit there and I have to choke back the gag reflex. I don't know why. I wish it was different for me. Maybe I just do. And some people I know that are listening today going, what are you crazy? Yes, I didn't say I wasn't. So eggs, if you have to cut them with a knife, man, that's good for me. And when people cook eggs, so that they got a little slime to them, scrambled eggs, so I know people that cook scrambled eggs got just a little slime to them, when they put them on the plate. It doesn't mean that I won't eat them. It just means I have to choke back the gag reflex to get them down because I have to think completely different on that. I look up and I think, okay, I'm thinking to myself, this is protein, Scott, you need the protein, and I just kind of move in my mind and I kind of scale it back. And meanwhile, what I'm doing is I'm thinking I'm praying this is American cheese, but it usually isn't, that they've added in. Egg smuggling. I never thought I'd ever see the day. Really. It blows my mind. As I was talking about this, my friend Stuart walked up to me yesterday. He said, you know what? They've about cracked this case. And it was the joke of the day. There's jokes about the eggs right now everywhere you go. The joke about, hey, they opened up Fort Knox and it's filled with eggs. They're high, no doubt. And mid last year, I really didn't have any idea. Mid last year, popped up in my email box a company that was having this massive sale on powdered eggs. Now, I know powdered eggs, we look at that and think, oh, the thought of it, especially if you've been in the military. But most of you, that if you stay the night in a motel that has a number in it, like Motel 6, and they have the continental breakfast, what you're getting is powdered eggs there. They mix a little water with it and pour it in. And powdered eggs, you can cook with those. And they're actually not terrible. As long as you don't just flip them and continue to flip them to where they're like, mealy when you go to eat them. You cook them a little salad. And I know you're probably thinking to yourself, are you seriously saying this? I am, because I didn't consider powdered eggs. But last year I thought, when this thing popped up, they were having this massive clearance sale on powdered eggs in one company. And a friend of mine sent this to me and said, have you seen the price of these? This is super cheap. And it was really cheap. Because mid-year, last year, eggs weren't an issue. They had gone up some, but they weren't, crazy. But powdered eggs were so cheap that it was like a case of powdered eggs for $30. And that was shipped to you. And so, if you spent $100 on their website, they would ship it to you. So I didn't just order eggs. I ordered one or two other things that they had, too as well. But they had powdered eggs, and you could buy a case for like $30 of these gallon-sized cans. So I thought, well, I'm game. I'll do that. They had a massive clearance. Little did I know that I was actually buying an investment. I had no idea. So I spent $30 to buy a case of powdered eggs, and today they'll probably sell for $300. Really. And I really picked them up because I thought, well, from time to time I primitive camp and go with guys who primitive camp and that sort of thing. And powdered eggs are a lot easier to carry. They just are. And they'll work in a pinch for breakfast. But today, try to find it. Oof. I can't imagine. Seriously. And now the price of chicken has got to go up too, as well. When your average chicken in the grocery store, your chicken breast, your whole chickens, they've got to go up. I'm sure the bird flu, as it spreads, has got to go up as well. I cannot imagine Chick-fil-A coming down the pike. Yeah, I'll take a number one, please, and I'll take the fries and a lemonade with that. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, sir. That'll be $57.46 if you'll just round the corner. And you think I'm kidding when I say that, but I just watched a black and white movie the other night where hamburgers were 15 cents and hot dogs were 10 cents a piece. And today, I don't think anyone at that time would have ever thought a hamburger would be $5 and up. If you can even find it that now. It's usually $5 to $7 and up. But I'm thinking maybe steak is going to be on the rise. Some sort of meat other than chicken is going to be on the rise in the near future. So I never thought we'd see this day. But I was sitting next to a guy last night. This is where I was getting around to. Pardon me while I just run the gamut today. I was sitting next to a friend last night, and I was doing my egg jokes about the price of eggs. And the first thing he said is that I saw on the news where it was Trump's fault, and everyone in the room literally about busted out in laughter because everything is Trump's fault. It's kind of the ongoing joke now. It's interesting. You reach for anything and you accidentally drop it on the floor. Oh, that's Trump's fault. I mean, it is. But, what I'm seeing right now, and it's interesting, the prime minister overseas, I was at Germany, that was there, that was talking, the chancellor of Germany or whatever, that she was speaking, And she was talking about there being a conservative revolution worldwide, and that she talked with world leaders as a conservative revolution coming that is worldwide, and we are actually seeing some of that. And so, interesting. And then all of a sudden today pops up on the headline about a younger generation. And the headline said that they've basically come to their senses now, and at this point, want to have nothing to do with quote unquote wokeism at all, and are running and flocking to this new conservative movement. I know it's new, flashy, exciting, but the new conservative movement at this point, there's just a big turn because of the feeling of great relief, which is interesting. So in the pending pile today, egg smuggling. Don't worry, folks. The penalty for egg smuggling is probably just going to get worse. At some point, hopefully they can fix the bird flu, and they can fix this issue. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Interesting. Maybe if they give the birds the leftover COVID shot, it might help. I'm not sure. Just a thought there. On February 21st, U.S. Customs and Border Protection said that since January, agricultural specialists at the El Paso, Texas Port of Entry have encountered more than 90 people attempting to smuggle eggs in from Mexico. Interesting. Texas is not alone in observing the recent rise of cross-border egg smuggling. In January, the San Diego office issued a similar warning, stating that travelers are caught bringing raw eggs into California. Oh my goodness. Unfortunately, man, the crime of bringing, the nerve of someone to bring raw eggs into California, you face a fine. It's interesting. What's interesting about this to me, this is what blows my mind. If you get caught smuggling raw eggs into California, the fine is $10,000. Interesting. It blows my mind. Now, you could smuggle a Mexican citizen across the border and get paid back for that, but you smuggle eggs and you get fined $10,000. Blows my mind here. And it's interesting. This is not just at the southern border. 17 areas of Canada at the same time facing the same issue. So there's got to be something said about this being big business, I guess. This is actually the smuggling of these raw eggs. We're not talking about truckloads here. We're actually talking about individual people that are coming across the border here, I guess. So there you go. Yes, eggs are way up. And I'm sure I have beat that topic to death. I have other topics to talk about today. So on my list of things today, the second thing, did you see this? That the Biden administration sent $2 billion to a Stacey Abrams-linked group in a green energy scheme. $2 billion, which is interesting there as we look at that. This is an interesting article, really. This was a scheme of wasteful spending, is what this article says. And what happens is $2 billion. So this says the Biden administration was allowing 8 entities to distribute $20 billion of taxpayer dollars at their discretion. Included in this was $2 billion granted to a Stacey Abrams pact, I guess. Unfortunately, the problem with this is it was supposed to be that $2 billion was going to be used for the decarbonization of homes. How do you decarbonize a home? That's what I want to find. And in low-income communities, and paid for new household appliances such as water heaters, induction stoves, solar panels, electric vehicle chargers and weatherization. I want to know something. I really do want to know this. If you're in a low income community, how in the world do you afford an electric vehicle? That's what I want to know. Let alone the power bill to charge one. That blows my mind. This company reported a complete total of, ready, $100 in revenue. And they were supposed to show that they were successful, so the Biden administration gave them $2 billion. Oh, wow. And it just gets better. As you go on down in this article, it just gets better. In this same conflict, $5 billion is given to the former director of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund under just an individual. That's just the president of this. Here's $5 billion. Go do whatever you want to with it. Folks, listen, it's amazing to me what they're uncovering as we get on down the road and get on down the line. And then what's funny about this, not really funny, what is probably great about this is that many other countries are following suit, doing the same thing. So my stack of stuff today, I was looking at that. That's interesting. And what did I tell you about? And another article I saw yesterday morning was the fact that the future for wind power production is grim, not good. And that they can't keep it up right at this point because of the fact that the cost of upkeep is so great, it's just not really worth it. Okay, so when you go through the Midwest, you see all of these wind farms and the ones that are off the coastline, like I was talking about the last few weeks. Now they just, let's abandon this project. Ooh, what an environmental disaster that is. And in solar, we talked about that. Past 5 years, solar panels, when they abandon those, people have actually abandoned entire solar farms as well. And the abandoning of these solar farms leaves the communities there left to clean up that mess of all those panels, trying to get back. Man, I was driving the other day through a gorgeous section of North Carolina, absolutely a gorgeous section of North Carolina. And I'd rounded the corner. They put a brand new solar farm in the middle of this valley that was drop dead gorgeous, y'all. And this acres upon acres of a solar farm on the side of this mountain. They'd mowed the trees down. I thought to myself, you have to be kidding me. I'm thinking to myself, what possible good is that doing right there? Imagine that 10 years down the road. I know. Get off your soapbox. I'm working on it. How about the Dodge dividend checks that could be coming? This is Musk saying that each family should get $5,000, at least $5,000 per family in dividend checks. Federal government going to pay those back as they're paying down the debt. Now, my thought on this, and I've had some conversation with other folks on this too, is why not just use that to pay the debt down totally? I mean, just get it all down and then stop. At some point, that's either taxes are less or that eliminates tax altogether. It'll take them some time to be able to do that. Obviously, if you look into this, it would take years and years to get to the point where you would not pay income tax. But right now, it's refund to the American people. The problem is, in doing that, we're still in debt. So when you're taking that money and you're giving it, you're taking money that's been promised somewhere else that you're saving, but you're still in debt. You really don't have that in mind. So when you don't have that in hand. And so when you decide, we're going to send 20% of our savings to the American people, you still don't have that in hand if you're getting what I'm saying here. I would think that still adds to the debt, even though you say you're going to save. You're dialing back. You're spending, yes, but you're still going into debt. So anyway, pay the debt down. And then for not just us, but the ones, our posterity, our future generation, and keep the debt down. Just a thought. But if you know anything about government, and if you know anything about elected officials. Keeping the debt down is not going to last for real long. It might last this 4 years. It might last another 4 more or 8 more, whatever. If a conservative gets elected, just a redefining of what this means. Conservatives live by a set of guidelines. They have boundaries they don't cross. They have a set of guidelines that they live within. And they basically stop and they get the people to agree on the fact that we're going to live inside these means. At this point, that's what being conservative means, that we're going to live within these means, and we're not going to go too far out, because if we go too far outside of these means, we will lose touch with reality. That's the bottom line. Liberals mean we do things outside the box. We don't adhere to those guidelines. And matter of fact, we really don't have a set of guidelines. We just kind of whatever may come. That's what liberal means. I'm liberal, so I don't really follow any rules. But they know the conservative rules, and so what they do is they throw those out and they use those against conservatives because they know that those are the rules they live by. But a conservative can't do the same. They can't throw those rules back at them because they can just jump back and say, well, I'm liberal. I don't follow by that anyway. Thus, you have the battle and the war, which is why spending is insane. Because conservatives will try to come and reduce government in some ways if we can live within these means and if we can live within these guidelines and boundaries. And liberals are like, hey, whatever will may come. It doesn't really matter. We want to research, the fact, is there truly daytime? Does that really exist? Even though the sun rises every day, should we really call it daytime? And they say, let's spend money on that. I saw someone that said, man, I can't believe it. There was a sort of a joke, I guess is what it was, that said, I can't believe it. I just got fired from my job for the federal government as a research scientist. We had almost figured out how many trucks a woodchuck could chuck. I mean, So and that's the idea of this. And conservatives come in and tried their best, or have always tried to promise this, but now we're actually getting it done. What am I saying? Well, adding $5,000 to a family doesn't do a single thing, really, for the families. It's been pretty much proven that if you give something to someone that they didn't actually hard or work earn, and don't get me wrong, I know this is taxes that have been earned, but it's not what you're used to on an everyday basis. A lot of these people are going to up the cruise lines, or they're going to go and spend money on, things that are get themselves into debt that they can't afford, and with an intention of trying to quote unquote stimulate the economy. Ladies and gentlemen, $5,000 per family is not going to stimulate the economy, at least not for very long. They might buy a bunch of junk they don't need. Some of them may pay off debt, and with their $5,000, by the end of this year, at this point, they might be able to buy 15 dozen eggs. But I just say, continuing on. This was a great article. This was an interesting article to me, and it is. They've the last few years they've been doing a study on people and how they sleep. Now, I thought they'd been doing this for many, many years, but here's this one. It's interesting to me, and this is the conclusion they've come up with, and it says, wearing socks can help you fall asleep faster, and here are the reasons why. And it goes into the details of why you should wear socks going to sleep at night. It helps you fall asleep faster, and it does, it talks about blood circulation and heat transfer and all of this stuff. The only problem with that is, for me, what I do is I climb into the bed. If I get a little warm, I need that bare foot to just stick out of the covers. Maybe you're one of those people too. I don't know that I could wear socks trying to sleep. Even when it's freezing cold outside and I have to climb into a sleeping bag, primitive camping, I still take my socks off climbing into the sleeping bag. I don't know why that is. If I'm hammock camping and it's freezing out and I'm hammock camping, and yes, I do hammock. People, I heard someone yesterday when I talked about hammock camping say, you'll freeze to death. No. If you do what I do, I have sort of a quilt that goes under the hammock and is firmly attached underneath the hammock. And so when you lay on it, it's like laying on a heated mattress pad, really, once you finally get into it. So more than you wanted to know. But the reality is, even when I'm hammock camping, I still love being out of those shoes and socks, sleeping. Love to throw that barefoot out, even if it's 15 degrees outside. I don't know why that is. It just is. Again, psychologically, maybe I'm crazy. I already knew that. But it goes into detail. And it says that, I think the reason why I really pulled this article up was this. They were talking about what is the premium temperature, the premium room temperature for someone to go to sleep. The ideal room temperature, this article says the ideal room temperature for sleep is 64 degrees Fahrenheit. 64 degrees Fahrenheit, the ideal temperature to go to sleep. Now, some people are saying, that's too cold. Some 64 degrees, I get it. 64 degrees if you're, and to me, I'm thinking, what does that depend on? I have a heated mattress bed. I love that thing. I turn that thing on high. I do. I turn that thing on high and I lay there. And when I get hot, do I shut it off? No, I don't shut it off. I throw the covers off is what I do. And then I cool down and I throw the covers back on. And I do this routine at night. 64 degrees. If you like blankets and on top, and I do, it works. 64 degrees, I can agree with that. So that's interesting. The pending pile today, all the crazy headlines. Egg smuggling, room temperature at 64 degrees, and everything else. The truth of this, I heard it on the news is quite the line. I heard it on the news. One of the things that you can pretty much bank on is if you heard it on the news, it's about like saying, I saw it on the internet. There's no doubt today. That cycle changes all the time and never stays the same. But now there is a cycle that does stay the same, and I did want to get into this. And this is important. When it comes down to it, what is it that you actually trust in and what is it that you believe in? And I'm really going to go here, Matthew chapter 7, real quick. We're going to switch gears for a second to go to Matthew chapter 7. This is Jesus talking in Matthew chapter 7. He says, therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine, he's coming out of the Beatitudes here. But he says, therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. But everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell. And great was its fall. Here's what I do know. People come, and there's tons of speculation all of the time about so-and-so said this person on the news, this high-up person, Musk had this to say, Trump had this to say, Biden had this to say. Stop. Reality is, one thing I do know in my life, of all the things that are out there, and of all the crazy headlines, and of all of the things you're going to listen to, and of all of the stories that are told, and of all the things you're going to hear at the barbershop, or the beauty salon, or wherever it's going to be that you run into people, the one thing I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that can be trusted are the things that Jesus spoke about and the things that are in the Bible. I've been going through and teaching Proverbs for the last really 20 weeks. That's been intense and it's been amazing because we've yet to find a single one of those that has not been absolute truth when you follow those. Matthew chapter 7 is Jesus talking, and he says basically, when it comes down to it, if you hear these sayings of mine and you do them, it's like building on a firm foundation. And what he's trying to tell you is they are absolute. There is nothing that you're not going to practice here in these sayings that are not going to benefit you. They will always benefit you. It'll always be to your best benefit to practice the things that they're saying because they are truth and they are proven. And at this point, after 2,000 plus years, they are proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. When you follow Jesus Christ and his teachings and his ways, this is something that for the last 400 years in this nation, we have understood and known. And I realize in this nation, we're 250 years coming up next year, as it's like this. But before that, when this nation was begun and started 400 years ago, from 400 years ago, today, when the first of the settlers came here to begin, this is what they believed, that the teachings of Jesus were truth and were guaranteed to be correct 100% of the time, and they still are. And there are a lot of people that want to buck that and go against that, and they do so with great remorse in their life at some point. Or they shorten the length of their life in some ways by not following these things. The reality is that these things are written and are spoken about, and Jesus spoke these things so that people could understand. You want abundant life? And I'm not talking about a life of abundance where you've got money pouring out to you, but abundant life, a life that is truly lived to its fullest extent, that it actually means something to be alive every day. Then follow these teachings of mine. And when you go through difficulties and times that are intense, of which we refer to as the storms of life, which are extremely difficult, if you're living by the things that Jesus has said in these teachings that are here, then it'll beat on the side of the house. And it may beat on your life in the moment, but you'll still remain standing. And if you don't follow these things, and you don't listen to these teachings, then the house will fall. It's true. It's true when it comes to families. It's true when it comes to friendships. It's true when it comes to dealing with human beings altogether. It's true when it comes to dealing with everyday life. It's true when it comes to dealing with whatever comes along. Understanding that the words are truth is important, but to follow those and to live by those, it's a pretty good life. Just saying. The world is out there. It's got its crazy headlines. It's got its crazy moments. The things you least expected have now become the expectation, which is incredible, really, to look at. But the reality is, the one foundation and the firm foundation that you can stand on, and the one thing that does not crack up, that really, when it comes down to it, holds everything together, it really is the teaching of Jesus. It really is that. It really is the fact that he came and who he truly is. That the words of the Bible ring true every time. Well, it means a lot. Now, when it comes down to it, finally in the end of it all, what does all that mean? To follow Jesus is an incredible step to take. It's amazing, really. It's something that you just don't get into lightly. It's not like something, well, maybe I'll try this. It doesn't work like that. It's understanding that once you come to Christ Jesus and you give your life to him, your life is going to change. That transformation that takes place in your life by the power of the Spirit of God will change your life. And to walk in a different way, and to live differently than you have, and to honestly walk in the ways of Christ brings a really good, solid foundation to your life. I'm telling you, it means everything. To be a believer in Jesus and to follow his word, I don't think there's anything greater. You've been listening to Grounded, the place to hear the salty truth. What does all this mean? Well, egg smuggling was the joke today, really. For real? Yeah, it's really. People are getting busted for egg smuggling. Things we didn't think about. But the reality is still reality when it comes down to it. It's like Jesus said here in the scripture that we're looking at today. If you will listen to my words and follow them, even the most difficult of days in your life, you'll be able to make it through and make it through well. What does all that mean? Well, today, the question is, do you know Jesus Christ as Savior and Lord? If not, you can stop right where you are and say, Lord, I need you in my life. Understanding that the one thing that's between you and him are the sins that you have not been forgiven for. And if you stop today and you say, Lord, please forgive me of the sins that stand in the way of walking with you in a relationship with you, please forgive me of those today. Come into my life, save me, and guide me from this day forward. He will be faithful to do so. And once that takes place in your life and you follow Jesus, there are some days ahead. And even though you may face the tough days, there are some things that go along with following Jesus. The fact that you are never separated from his presence, the fact that you're given a peace that surpasses all understanding in difficult times and moments, the fact that you've given the power to walk day by day, the fact that you're guided in truth, these are all things that are important and they are key. Next, today, I don't know what you're into or what you're reading or what you're looking at, but the truth is, what can you truly believe? Not much of what's being said today as far as by the news media or what's on the internet. It's hard to believe any of that. Most of that is very biased to try to get you to purchase a product of some kind or to sow seeds of discord or discontentment in your life. I'm just telling you, if you want out of the trap and want off the merry-go-round, just follow Jesus. Spend time in his word. If you find yourself spending time, far more time, in other places and no time in the word, I guarantee you today, your life will change if you'll pick up his word daily and read it. Just an encouragement, especially if you're a believer. Let go of those things. Hang on to Jesus. Follow his way and let him move mightily in your life. Just a few things that are on my heart today. I hope that you guys are having a great day out there. As spring quickly approaches us, I'm excited about that. And I'm looking forward to what's ahead. I hope you are as well. So you guys, hopefully all of you have a great week, and I will talk to you next Monday.